So what we've got behind me here is the proa sitting out in front of the boat shed. Yesterday, Kale and I got the new beams bolted into place, and we also bolted on the AMA, which is the outrigger. And then we put in what's known as our utility tube, and it's the, in lieu of a deck, it's a piece of aluminum structure that I had created that's going to support our crane, which in turn supports our sail. It's also going to support the rudders that we were just looking at, and it's going to support the engine and a lot of the other aspects of the function of the proa, all on one big tube. Plus the tube provides a level of rigidity that we can use for our dynamic rigging and stuff. So we're going through our little gate here and go look at that. Gracie, you stay there, sweetie. Anyway, so here we are with the proa, and as you can see, we've got the carbon fiber crane leaning on the pod, and this is going to be our boom, or our yard actually. It's going to be what's used to haul the sail up. So at some point that's going to be attached to this rail, which is in the roadies at the moment, and that rail is going to end up on that bow. It'll come out this way. That crane will be lifted way up, and this will be way up, of course. And so our sail will be right here, and that'll be the size of the yard. So it's 30 feet, and we have a boom that's also 30 feet. Big ass crab claw. And so that'll all be lifted way up in the air, and all this math worked out so that you can get up here and the sail can go back and forth and not walk into anything. It's the anti-walk factor that we're engineering at the moment. So we'll go around here to our working area. Part of the boat, and as you can see, there's our aluminum utility tube. Now it's in the process of being finished out. It's an interesting construct. It's 6061 aircraft aluminum, very dense stuff. You can do anything you want with it. You got to be careful of heat. Good welding job here, but you can't bend it. Once you bend it, it loses its certain aspects of its strength, and it's no good for our purposes. So basically what we're doing is we're putting on some rollers up here. Once this thing is all stable and stuff, putting some rollers up here and bolting our stainless steel rod to those, and that's what's going to lower the rudders down into place. It's actually upside down at the moment. Anyway, and then the beams here hold up the AMA, or connect the AMA, because everything will be floating. And the crane, which is this carbon fiber rod, will actually be sitting in the middle of our aluminum tube and sticking way up there, hauling up everything this direction. And then I can run the rigging. We can start doing our rope work here, put in the electrics, and then get us certified for that we float. We're not an instant danger to ourselves or anybody else, little do they know, and get out into the water. Our beams are really solid. They weigh virtually nothing. They're mainly foam and very thin plywood. This is our carbon fiber mast. We've got our crane. We've got the plastic on it at the moment, just because we're going to be doing some rough handling. There's Kale's boat there, Tiki 23 actually. It's an expedition style Tiki 21. So it's a Tiki 21 that's been slightly increased by volume and is able to go on long hauls up the coast, that kind of thing. Very splashy boat though, very wet. I'm getting old and I don't want to be wet, so our nice little pod will keep us dry. This is the level of the beams here, so you can see where basically our deck line comes relative to the door. It's just a little bit below this. And we'll be standing here. It'll be netting over us. We'll have the rudders hanging down from the ends of the pipe. There will be some cabling that makes all that work. More cabling to make the crane go back and forth and lift up the booms and such. Some netting, electric motor, big electric battery that's really not all that large, just high power. And that'll be about it. A lot of safety gear, and we're set. We've got the sail sewn up and inside. We're watertight. Been out in the rain repeatedly, so there's no problem here. Got our netting ready to go for the trampoline. This will be the size of the deck, which ultimately had intended to have a awning thing for camping on. So if you wanted to take it out in inclement weather and sit, yet have plenty of room, you know, you'd have this 10 by 20 plus foot deck area. So getting very close. The AMA is nicely situated and it's done. As with any of these, we've had some issues on alignments and holes and so on. Considering that it was all designed many years ago, and have had some necessary changes in terms of where the door is relative to the pod and so on, because we originally decided to have it in the more towards one bow, but for a number of reasons didn't. But because of small changes, we've had to incrementally make changes as we've gone along. Now we have to engineer something for a launch to hold up this part of the boat so we don't put too much strain on it. And other than that, most of our major work is done. Most of it's constructed. The stuff left has been designed. We know exactly what we're doing. We just have to get around to doing it in terms of the support for the crane and how it's going to attach, and then the other cabling and so on. The tubing provides us with a real good point of rigidity should we have to go to cables to keep everything tensioned well, and now we can start in on some of our innovations. So basically, even though I've had to invent a lot of stuff just to get us to this point, the point of getting to this was to be able to come on in and start doing some of the newer stuff, some of the really cool stuff that we've got design that we want to put on in. I've been thinking about doing some curved foils so that we can get up in hydroplane that's further down the road. We'll have a Bruce foil right where I'm at here anyway, just to provide downward thrust so I don't have to carry much in the way of ballast, and I can just use this for dry gear and dry storage. It's actually quite voluminous. We get a fair amount of storage out of the AMA. It'll hold 2,000 pounds total displacement to within an inch of the hull. I don't know if we're going to get much in the way of light here to see, but it's got some storage capacity. Expedition kind of thing. And certainly for all of our cameras and our video gear and other goods that we've got going here. So anyway, that's where we're at right at the moment with this. I'm going to have to get moving here. I've got Kale showing up, and we're doing the rest of the crane fix today so we can take some measurements and get it all skookum. We have to build a couple of little tiny pieces for the beams to support the whole thing and keep it from shifting. And boy, it's starting to look like a boat, however weird it is. And we're going to go finish the foils out, or the foil sleeves for our rudders. And that's about it on this. Now, one last thing on the silver stuff. This is just a quick update. Yes, the data does have Joy as our operating emotive force here for the month of October, actually well into November. For silver, it looks as though it won't necessarily be straight up, but it's going to be continuous grind up. In terms of prices, that's the way that it's coming across in the data at the moment. We seem to have some realistic support for that happening in our what we laughingly call the markets, our real world. And so I think that we may end up with a decent month, and we may meet that emotive criteria on it. There's more about that in our next Alta report, which I'm hoping to get out by the 9th or the 10th. A lot of stuff, so we're going through it, and I've got to be very careful because I'm tuning the lexicon. And it's easy to make mistakes when you do that, because everything is sort of, in terms of code, is open and running in a not quite bolted down fashion. So in any event, the Joy component of silver is our dominating, rising, primary supporting aspect both bespoke as joy and as the emotive sum for joy. So looks to be pretty good, and we'll see how good the forecast is. Should run until the third week of November before there's too much in the way of a hiccup. I don't know what's going to happen then, but it looks as though big issue events are going to start popping near the end of November and into the first part of December. We'll get some more details in the data and get it out in the next few reports here, I'm sure. Anyway, that's it for this. I'm going to smush a couple of these little tiny guys together, these little GoPro things, and we'll call it a outside the boat shed look at what the hell's going on. We actually had our heater break, so we're doing a lot of the work outside anyway. Speaking of heaters, that's our heater up there. Even though we're technically in global warming at the moment, we're spending a lot of time in getting heat issues resolved because of the forecasts of the data and everything I've got that supports it. We're going into an ice age, and we'll start feeling it fairly seriously fairly soon. Early 2016, I think. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to everybody.